Good afternoon. My name is Sam Park and I'm here at the Gothenburg Water Utilization Learning Center, and I'm standing here in a field of corn that was recently harvested, and the field is covered in corn residue. And that's the topic of today's video, is corn residue. And so what we're going to be discussing is kind of the positives and the negatives of residue, practices that are going to affect it, and then what you can expect under a dry land or an irrigated scenario. So the main positive that comes from corn residue is going to be your moisture capture. And so specifically in the winter time, as say it snows, and the snow's here on the field, these corn stalks are really going to help by keeping the snow here on the field rather than blowing it right off, and allow that snow to melt and infiltrate into your soil. Which brings us to the next point, right? Our crop residue and corn residue is going to increase our infiltration in the soil. So as a moisture event occurs, it's going to trickle down off of the residue into your soil, allow for better infiltration rather than just hitting bare soil and washing off, which could then also lead to erosion and then loss of soil through that way. Another way it's going to keep water in your field is reduce evaporation. So it's going to just it's going to cover your soil and just block the sun from directly impacting those water molecules and making them evaporate off the soil surface. And then when you come to springtime, also this residue is going to increase your organic matter and just increase your nutrients that may be available for that crop. So some of the negatives that are going to come from residue is going to be a potential increase in disease pressure, especially in a continuous corn-on-corn system. One more thing is that if you have a really thick layer of residue, seedlings may have a hard time punching through there, so you may have uneven germination and early vegetative growth stages in those heavy residue areas. So just something to keep in mind. So some general practices that are going to remove your residue is going to be grazing, baling, or shredding. And then some of the ones that are obviously going to keep it on the field is going to be a no-till or a delayed till. So like a delayed till, you could leave this residue here over the winter time, bank as much moisture as you can, and if you want to, you can then till that back in the soil for that spring crop. So a general rule of thumb to keep in mind is that about 40 bushels per acre of corn is going to equal about 1 ton of residue. So you can kind of keep that in the back of your head as we're going through some of these next scenarios. Under an irrigated conditions, so if you're irrigating your corn, you will have less of a concern with moisture capture over the winter time, because you can always just make up for it come in the summertime just by irrigating. And you can also expect more residue in an irrigated system versus a dry land, just because you're planting at those higher densities and you will have more plants per acre in the irrigated situation. What some studies have found is that under irrigated scenarios, if you remove 40% of your residue, you can increase your yields by about 6 bushels per acre in a tilled scenario and 15 bushels per acre in a no-till scenario. And so what the benefit of that is going to do is pull off some of that extra residue, allow for better germination, and while still being able to bank some of that moisture from the wintertime. Now, switching to a dry scenario, you obviously have a higher concern for moisture, because all your moisture is going to be coming from either summer rainfall or your winter moisture events, if you want to get as much of that in the soil as you can. So what some studies have found there is that you can have a 2 bushel per acre increase for if you do not remove residue versus if you remove, say, 50% of your residue. And that's all just attributed to how much this residue can help keep moisture on your field and bank moisture in your field over the winter time. So again, just kind of here in conclusion, you always want your residue management strategy to match your production system. So in irrigated, maybe pull some of it off while still using half of, maybe you remove 50% of it. So some of it's going to be able to stay here to absorb moisture while still allowing those seedlings to pop through evenly. And then in a dry land, maybe you want to leave all of it on here to just try and bank as much of that moisture in your soil as you can for your next season. Thank you for your time. I hope you all have a great day.
Thanks for watching this video from the Gothenburg Water Utilization Learning Center. For more information, please call 308-537-4500.